Well, obviously, I'm not feeling well today. It's really hard to breathe now, and I think the only reason I'm still here is that I have to finish this. Martin provided me with this text, as I'm having such a hard time maintaining my cohesive thinking. I'm just so depleted. On top of that, Martin says there are men watching the house, and tapping the phone. That's why we contacted you through a third party. I'm not sure when they're going to make their move, but Martin says we're making our move in the next 2 hours. So this will be the last taping. As I told you before, the twin planets where my people emanate were manipulated by outsiders. Our DNA was blended with theirs to elevate our species so that we could work for our gods. And we did work for our gods for thousands of years. When Insigne, another planet from our solar system, made its 12,000-year rotation around the sun, the magnetic pull dislodged a giant ice sheet, which had weakened coming out of the previous ice age, and it slid into the ocean. It caused a near planet-wide flood. Many were killed, but the gods knew this was coming, and they had instructed a trusted servant to store the DNA samples of all the animals and plants on a boat. After this great culling, more autonomy was granted to my people, and the planet was divided into 4 regions with different kings. Our people then worshipped or worked for the kings year after year. We built magnificent stone structures for the flying machines to navigate on our planets. We built cities and roads to connect us to further cities. The gods spread out to different regions of our planets and shared just enough technology with my people as was needed for us to serve them. And then, as gods do, there was a power struggle between families. It resembled a soap opera, and a devastating weapon was used to destroy much of our earliest civilization. It was at this point that most of the gods, shocked by what they had done, decided to return home and leave only a small caretaker force behind. Technologies, natural cyclical events, organizations, and control strategies were handed down to the kings and other chosen people by the departing gods. Through secret societies, the spider web of manipulation has been forwarded generation after generation by bloodlines that rule my planet and its twin to this day. The religions that formed in the early days of our development control vast amounts of data and information, as well as physical wealth. The earliest scribes passed on enormous amounts of secret information that has been withheld from the masses of my people. From the start, certain people learned how to create money, and what I mean by that is they created credit that they loaned to even the most powerful of kings. In this way, the Vulcene, or in your language, banksters, financiers, or money changers, became the secret rulers behind the rulers. But the Vulcene were not at all powerful on their own. Since their power was not physical, but created from air, they had to create a complex web of deceit, not only to control the masses, but to always obscure the Vulcene from view. The Vulcene created a pyramid structure of power where each layer knew less than a layer above. At the top, the Vulcene saw everything, but no one could see them. Minions could be given great power of the most menial of tasks, but they were always compartmentalized and unaware of the grand scheme that existed above them. As cities gradually became city-states, and eventually countries, and then empires, maps would be drawn and redrawn by war and conquest. Many would perish, and our barbarism towards one another seemed to know no bounds. But every war costs resources to fight, and the Vulcene were always there to loan money to both sides. And the Vulcene didn't just take advantage of the follies of kings and the megalomaniacs. The Vulcene spent money in order to ensure that the war would start. Through organizations much like Earth's Royal Institute of International Affairs and its American branch, the Council on Foreign Relations, agents of the Vulcene dictated the course of national policies education policies, international relationships, war and peace, a selection of politicians, and the media's storyline. But the central banks themselves always remain separate and above all else. None of the Vulcene's own governments, or round tables or secret societies had any say over the secretive accountings of the central banks. Now we ordinary people believed that we were advancing. We were led to believe that it was our self-determination that had created the international collective, or as we say here on Earth, globalism. But it is largely through the dictates of a group of families that each war, each treaty, each free trade agreement, and each international law is enacted. Each has a function, each is a strategy. Each leads to further consolidation of power into the hands of the few. Each is sold as if it is an advance, a promise of greater sharing for the collective. And yet each time a law is passed, there is less freedom for the individual and less freedom for the nation. It is at this point that one has to notice that it wasn't simply wealth the Vulcene were seeking. It was absolute power. The 500 wealthiest and most powerful corporations were all connected through interlocking directorates. The boards were made up of representatives of and for the wealthiest people on the planets. There were scuffles occasionally, and one corporation might eat another, but they all functioned together as an entity more powerful than any government. The entertainment industry was fully owned and controlled by the wishes of the Vulcene. The media was likewise owned and completely controlled by agents of the Vulcene. Stories that questioned or skewered certain power brokers would occasionally air, but the system and the righteousness of the system was never questioned. The classic liberal or left-leaner would blame the corporations and the right wing for the evils and the lack of forward progress, but it was the Vulcene who owned the corporations and the politicians. The classic conservative or right-leaner would blame the left-wing media, the entertainment industry, and the left wing for all of the moral decline and ills of society, but once again it was the Vulcene who owned the airwaves, the entertainment business, and the politicians. Throughout our history, our people understood that politics was a struggle between the all-powerful state and the individual. That is, until the Vulcene created the right-left paradigm and in effect neutered all opposition. While the left and right sniped at one another, the Vulcene stole money and more liberty from the individual. When the left took power, they chopped away at liberties and created a bigger, more powerful ruling class under the name of human rights, gun control, the environment, or healthcare. And when the right took over, they chopped away at liberties and created a bigger, more powerful ruling class under the name of defense, or law and order, or moral values. The Vulcene owned both sides through blackmail, the gifts of wealth and status, and of course, the threat of assassination. The average person just sat and wondered why nothing ever changed for the better, and why the politicians would say one thing and then do another. You may think at this point that what I've told you is about as bad and nightmarish a scenario that anyone could think about relaying. But my fellow travelers, it gets much worse. I never would have believed that Earth would follow the same path that the twin planets followed, but it has. The next part will fill you with fear and anger. You must harness your fear and direct your anger carefully. If you act out carelessly, you will fall right into the hands of those who wish.
We have to go. Now.
I leave this in your hands. Give it to the people. Put up a fight. Time is up.